that was written, it's postulating it. I guess they took a lot of the evidence that they had been finding and saying this shows that there might have actually been Egyptians there.
For years, the Grand Canyon has been a subject of interest for the scientific community, but recently they found something that terrifies them. New evidence indicates that the Egyptians might have inhabited the Grand Canyon much before than most of us thought. What's even more shocking is that the Smithsonian Institute had known about the Egyptians' arrival for hundreds of years, and yet chose to hide it from the public. However, Joe Rogan has taken it upon himself to reveal the truth, alongside a special guest, Hotep Jesus. Just why did the government choose to hide the Egyptians' arrival? And if so, then what implications does their arrival carry? We'll get into that and more in today's video. The beginning, the Grand Canyon has intrigued the scientific community for years now. For years, ecologists and geologists from all over the world have tried to unravel the secrets carved within the walls of this historical monument. From rocks that date back 1.2 billion years to the oldest vertebrate fossil, the Grand Canyon is not short on mysteries, which is why significant efforts to study the canyon in great detail have been underway over the years. Each discovery has only confused scientists and brought them no closer to unraveling the secrets of the canyon. Joe Rogan and his special guest add to the pile as they dig into the arrival of the ancient Egyptians to the Grand Canyon. The discovery has shaken the very foundations of our very culture and heritage knowledge. From a geological perspective, the claim seems unfounded given the current location of Egypt and the Grand Canyon. With a distance of about 12,000 kilometers separating the two, it seems highly unlikely that the ancient Egyptians would have made their way to the Grand Canyon. But there's truth to these claims after all. To solve the mystery, we must go back to the beginning, but first, we must take a closer look at the Grand Canyon of today. The steep-sided canyon carved by the Colorado River in Arizona runs 277 miles long with a width of 18 miles and a depth of 1 mile. Aside from its massive size, what makes the Grand Canyon so intriguing is its rock formations. Formed during the Paleozoic era, they make the site an essential stop during your next road trip. As the Colorado River cuts through the rocks, 2 billion years of Earth's geological history has come to light. While it's still widely debated, a growing community of scientists believes that the Colorado River first took this course 5 to 6 million years ago and has been reshaping the Grand Canyon ever since. Interestingly, it was Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, who first saw the Grand Canyon in all its glory. In 1903, President Theodore visited the Grand Canyon himself and gave a historic speech where he admitted to finding the canyon awe-inspiring, even calling it absolutely unparalleled throughout the wide world. Staying true to his words, the president declared the canyon a national monument in 1908. Soon after, the canyon was hailed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site before officially being labeled as an international dark sky park. That said, Roosevelt might have been the first to recognize the glory of the Grand Canyon, and in no way is he the last. However, new evidence suggests that the ancient Egyptians might have been the first ones to acknowledge the grandeur of this natural wonder. It certainly comes as no surprise since the Egyptians have long been recognized in history for their innovations and refined taste in everything, from arts to heritage.
It's America. But that area in Ohio also is known as the sandstone capital of the world, and I don't know if that's related to the Egyptians.
However, the idea that the Egyptians might have inhabited the Grand Canyon before the Americans has long been deemed inaccurate. But this is where Joe Rogan, a renowned podcaster, comes in with the missing pages of history. Accompanying him is none other, Hotep Jesus, a fellow African-American media personality, marketer, author, and performance artist who set the internet ablaze a few times now with his wild theories. On February 23, 2023, these two daring truth seekers set out to rewrite history on the Joe Rogan Experience. Remarkably, these two men came armed with evidence as they shook the entire scientific community. Hotep Jesus pulled back the curtains on the findings uncovered by the Smithsonian Institute during their research in the Grand Canyon. According to him, Smithsonian researchers discovered the shocking truth about the Egyptians inhabiting the canyon. His story begins at Kincaid's Cave, located within one of the canyon's many rock formations. The cave owners, G.E. Kincaid, a second explorer, and a scout for the Smithsonian, unravel the secrets of America's greatest landmark. His efforts succeed those of John Wesley Powell, a world-famous archaeologist with one arm who happened to work for the Smithsonian Institute. While Powell is credited as the first to cross the Green River route, it seems like Kincaid brought more shocking truths to light. Kincaid's shocking discoveries. Sensing the cultural significance of the canyon, Kincaid took it upon himself to traverse the Colorado River. This was around the time President Theodore was making plans to declare the Grand Canyon off-limits to all kinds of mining and timber operations. Recognizing a window of opportunity, Kincaid decided to make the most of it before it slipped away. Accompanied by geologist S.A. Jordan and his team, Kincaid bravely made the journey from the Green River to the Colorado River. Upon their arrival, stains in the sediment formation. 2,000 feet up at about 40 miles upriver from the El Tovar, Crystal Canyon caught Kincaid's eye. Curious, the daring explorer tied up his boat and got off to investigate. Unfortunately, Kincaid did not find a trail, but he did find something even more mysterious covered in a desert brush. Steps. Lots of them. Not one to give up, Kincaid followed the sandstone steps until he ended up at the entrance of a cave, one that was clearly man-made. Continuing his investigation, Kincaid stepped inside, only to discover scribbles on the wall, and this is where things got interesting. Given what archaeologists knew about the canyon, they expected these writings to be in English or Native American, but that wasn't the case. In fact, far from it, much to Kincaid's shock and later the rest of the scientific community. The scribblings were made up of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Interestingly, the cave was located on government property, which meant that no trespassers were allowed to enter. But that's not all. Upon further exploration, Kincaid found that the cave expanded into a network of tunnels and rooms further down.
From 1800 to 1980, 21 times the amount of sandstone that made the Great Pyramid was shipped out of Ohio to make various buildings all over the world.
Really? The rooms were a mystery of their own as Kincaid stumbled upon granaries featuring shelves laden with glazed pottery, many of which still held preserved seeds along with countless ancient artifacts. He also found several cooking areas and a huge dining hall. But what's more shocking is the presence of metalwork in another room. According to what scientists knew about the Egyptians, this technology should not have existed during this time period. And yet there was Kincaid and his team, staring at descriptions of tools made of copper, with charcoal and other materials sitting on a bench running around the room. Chemists throughout history had struggled with nailing the art of hardening metal, and yet somehow the Egyptians had mastered the skill long before anyone. And that's not all. The cave almost looked like an underground Egyptian tunnel city, with the capacity to house around 50,000 people. Aside from the hieroglyphics, Kincaid and his team discovered relics and a shrine to Smenkhkare, an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who ruled during the Amarna period of the 18th dynasty. Other findings included an Egyptian relic made out of pure gold. It looked like an artifact of King Khaen, with lotus flowers indigenous to Egypt in both hands. Interestingly, it was found in the cave's first cross tunnel, which is the same place most shrines have been found in the Valley of Kings in tunnel cities. King Khaen holds special importance in Egyptian history as the descendant of King Zaphnath of Egypt, who is rumored to be Joseph in the Bible. To add to the mystery, Kincaid also came upon a golden tablet that detailed crucial information concerning the arrival of King Zaphnath in Aslan, along with the arrival of King Khaen in the Grand Canyon. Another room, which was supposedly a crypt, contained several rows of mummies. Some of them were covered with clay, while others were wrapped in bark fabric, erasing all doubts about the Egyptians' arrival. Realizing what he had discovered, Kincaid requested the Smithsonian Institute for financial and logistical support, since uncovering all the secrets of the cave was beyond one man's capabilities. A few weeks later, Professor J.A. Jordan arrived at the site with a team of 40 researchers, and together they undertook the task of mapping the cave. This is when the scientists discovered something truly remarkable. At first, Kincaid and his team had deemed the cave system to be random, but that wasn't the case. It was in fact an elaborate, symmetrical design, leading up to a central room, one with the statue of King Cayenne. Kincaid called this room the Citadel. As the men continued with their exploration, they found more irrefutable proof of the cave system being an underground city rather than a temple, one that housed a considerable population for thousands of years. They discovered cooking utensils, pottery urns, and large stone tablets with hieroglyphics. However, there were still aspects of the cave that confused the Smithsonian scientists. Who built the Citadel? What did the writings mean? It looked Egyptian, but it was nothing like scientists had seen before, leaving them with no way to translate the hidden meanings. However, there were two things that Kincaid and his team could say with profound confidence. The civilization that inhabited the cave was way ahead of its time. The cave dwellers lived a more advanced life than nearby tribes of that region. The people here worked with bronze, long before the Bronze Age even began. What's more, they seemed to follow an advanced system for the division of labor and agriculture when the rest of human society was stuck in old ways. Given what archaeologists and historians have known about human civilization so far, the cave and its people should not exist. Kincaid and his team also agreed that the cave dwellers were not locals. Instead, in their scientific opinion, they migrated from some far-off land. With a huge mystery at his hands, Kincaid requested the Institute for further resources. But his request was denied. The controversy. Despite the enormity of Kincaid's discoveries, it seems like the Smithsonian Institute had no interest in uncovering the cave's mysteries. Many think it might have something to do with the cave's location. Interestingly, Kincaid's cave is located in a restricted space, with an unforgiving route being the only way to reach the site. The airspace above the cave is restricted as well, leaving scientists and the general public with no way to access the mystifying cave. Over the years, many have tried to do the impossible, but the efforts of these brave men have borne little to no fruit. What's more, all records of Kincaid's discoveries have been erased or declared invalid. Just why would the government go to such lengths to hide the cave? While the answers have eluded many of us over the years, Hotep Jesus is here to bring the truth to light. Hotep Jesus' take. The famous author starts off by highlighting the fact that all the Grand Canyon monuments are named after Egyptian pharaohs. For this reason alone, there's a high chance the site was formerly an Egyptian complex. However, his next piece of evidence is more shocking. Hotep Jesus draws attention to the fact that the Grand Canyon aligns with the same stars of the pyramids, including the constellations of Pleiades and Orion, and that's not all. Hotep Jesus further backs his claim by pointing out how sandblasting is abundant in the region.
We know some. The only history that we know is the one we go discover on our own time. The one that's presented to us is not history. It's all lies.
Throughout history, this particular phenomenon of abrasive blasting has held critical importance for the Egyptians. They used sandblasting to move massive slabs to build pyramids. Before scientists had discovered the ancient art of sandblasting, the pyramids remained an unsolved mystery. Just how were the Egyptians able to construct these enormous structures using manual labor alone? However, the mystery was solved, with a study detailing the sliding friction of wet and dry sand was published in the journal Physical Review Letters in 2014. The study is based on a wall painting in Jehuti Hotep's tomb, which depicts a person standing in front of a wooden sled and wetting the sand. At first glance, the painting looks like just another Egyptian artifact. It was Detlef Bonn, a physics professor at the University of Amsterdam, who made the connection and published the study. He proved his theory with the help of an Egyptian sled and a tray of sand, carrying weights between 100 dream and a few kilograms. Detlef explained that when the sand is dry, it forms a hard heap in front of the slope, making it difficult for more. However, when the same sand is wet, the sled can be easily moved across the terrain, requiring only half the force. The trick here is to use just the right amount of water as moving. The sled will become too difficult if it's too dry or wet. The Egyptians seem to have figured out this balance of wet and dry sand and used it to their advantage to move massive slabs of stone long before anyone. This unique method of wetting the sand allowed them to cut down on manpower and essentially expedite construction. Before Detlef came along, pouring water on the sand was chalked up to just another element of Egyptian culture. However, Thanks to his efforts, the scientific community now knows the importance of sandblasting for ancient Egyptians. Naturally, the fact that sandblasting is abundant in the Grand Canyon holds profound implications. In Hotep Jesus' eyes, this is irrefutable proof of the Africans making their way to the continent long before the Native Americans. More evidence. Surprisingly, there exists more proof. Long before, the Grand Canyon became a tourist hotspot. It was home to several tribes including the Hopi, Navajo, Zuni, and Apache. In fact, some of them still live around the region. The Pueblo people considered the Grand Canyon a holy site, even going as far as to make pilgrimages to it. Interestingly, Hopi mythology says that the first people of the world emerged from the canyon. The story goes that thousands of years ago, a reptilian race found its way out of the canyon and transformed into humans. Pueblo culture has similar legends, with some mentioning reptiles, while others mention giants. The idea that Columbus was the first one to make his way to North America has long been debunked. In fact, that honor goes to the Vikings, who inhabited parts of Newfoundland 500 years before anyone stumbled on the New World.
That leave Africa and try to come to Spain on these places on a chicken wing.
Yeah.
What's more, scientists now believe that the Chinese might have made their way to North and South America, even before the Vikings. That said, it still leaves us with a puzzling question. How did the Egyptians make their way to the Grand Canyon? How did they traverse the lands and find the resources to build an extensive underground city? From what little we know about ancient history, it almost seems impossible. The Grand Canyon offers an unforgiving landscape, one not everyone can conquer, much less a population of 50,000. Hopi culture offers an answer. They speak of the ant people, humanoid creatures with pale skin and insect-like eyes who inhabited the earth long ago. As per the legend, tragedy struck, driving the Hopi to the brink of extinction, which is when a sky god emerged and brought the Hopi to the ant people, who provided them asylum in the underground caves. The Paiute have a similar legend about the Hav-Musuvs, alien-looking humans with golden skin and large eyes. According to the people, the Hav-Musuvs lived in an underground city, secluded from the rest of society. What's more, according to the old stories, the Hav-Musuvs fought with silver tubes that shot lightning, capable of killing a man in seconds. While these cultural folktales are not irrefutable pieces of evidence, they allude to an underground civilization, more advanced than its time, which is exactly what Kincaid and his team had concluded. Unfortunately, the scientific community has more or less given up on the mysteries of the cave. What's more shocking is that some have labeled Kincaid's discoveries as a mere hoax. Unfortunately, there's no means to prove Kincaid's claims given its location. What's interesting is that from Kincaid's recount of the expedition, it seemed like he wanted to keep people out. He writes that the cave is nearly inaccessible, with the entrance located 1,486 feet down the canyon wall. He discouraged anyone from tracing his footsteps by saying how such a trip would be fruitless and the visitor would be sent away. It's almost as if he wanted to keep the citadel hidden. Just why would Kincaid and his team bury the biggest discovery of their career? While there have been no answers for years now, it hasn't stopped curious individuals from trying to unravel the mystery of it all. One such pair is Jerry Wills and his wife Kathy, who have been studying the Kincaid Cave mystery for years. The couple started their search by looking for the original base camp of the explorers. However, even finding the location of the base camp was no walk in the park. But the pair was not one to give up. Fueled by a desire to rewrite human history, Jerry and Kathy continued their efforts until they finally paid off. The two ended up discovering a site with artifacts from that time. Right below from here is where the two think the entrance to the underground city is located. However, once again the scientific quest for answers is hindered as the area is deemed off limits. Over the years, a handful of curious individuals have tried to make their way in by signing a piece of paper that says the government won't be responsible in case of an incident. But these efforts have been more or less futile. Despite the obstacles, Jerry and Kathy took it upon themselves to find the answers to the most burning questions. However, as they did, a plane flew over their heads, implying that they were being watched. Scared, the team decided it was best to turn away for fear of incurring any potential losses. Others have tried to do the same, only to return empty-handed. To add to the mystery of this forbidden zone, the rock formations here have rather unusual names. Isis Temple, Horus, the Cheops Pyramid, and Ra. There's also the Buddha Temple, the Krishna Temple, and the Shiva Temple. Coincidentally, most of these names refer to ancient Egyptian and Hindu cultures, all of which speak of an ancient underground civilization. That said, there might be an institutional problem at play here as well. During his tenure at the Smithsonian Institute, Powell appointed Cyrus Thomas as the director of the Eastern Mound Division of the Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of Ethnology. Now, Thomas happened to be one of the select few who believed that a race of mound builders arrived in the region before the Native American Indians. This particular school of thought is called diffusionism. Historians who support this school of thought firmly believe in the widespread dispersion of culture and civilization across the lands. Unfortunately, for Thomas, the Smithsonian Institute thought otherwise. The Institute believed in what we call isolationism, according to which civilizations separated by large bodies of water have little to no contact with one another. This line of thought completely erases all possibility of the Egyptians' arrival in the region. However, the notion that civilizations existed in complete isolation from one another is not a popular one. Burial spots in the American Midwest pointed to the existence of people as tall as 7 or 8 feet. Similarly, when the